Okay, so I just saw a delicious headline from USA Today. Now, USA Today is known for writing hit pieces about people like me, my co-author Jack Posobiec. This is what they do every single time. Now, in this particular headline, there's so much manipulative content in here, linguistic anchoring, like we like to talk about. I had to just read it to you, and I think we're going to focus today's entire episode on just this headline and then the preview text for it. It's delicious. Are you ready? Okay, I'm going to read it to you. USA Today. Searching for voters. Donald Trump goes darker with pre-election rhetoric. Oh, that's saucy. Why does it open with searching for voters? One of the conspiracy theories that was woven around Donald J. Trump in January 2021 surrounding the January 6th anti-insurrection. And you know exactly what we mean by that if you've been paying attention and if you read Unhumans, the good chapters. They're all good, but we're talking about the ones that have the sizzle in them. You get the steak at the beginning, but the sizzle is in those chapters, chapters 12 and 13. Searching for voters. Remember, there's a transcript of a call where Donald Trump allegedly said, find me 11,000 votes, referring to Georgia. Margin of victory needed. So the idea, so that was then turned into make up voters, as opposed to find ballots. This is the number that we need in order to win the state. I don't think anyone who is in their logical mind thinks that there's anything illegal with what was said during that particular moment in that transcript. But the insurrection narrative is so strong, it's so sticky for anyone who is left of Liz Cheney, that the find the voters, search for voters, find voters, that searching for voters is its linguistic anchor. Slightly different terminology, but the idea is, oh, we're back to the electioneering, we're back to the election shenanigans again. Oh, we're back to trying to be engaging in illegal activities, right? And so before anything happens, it's a habit, it's a trigger. It's like Pavlov's dog. The bell rings, they salivate. They mention searching for voters, you think, oh no, it's going to happen again before anything else happens. So that's where your mind goes. That's where the mind goes. They're so good at this, aren't they? They're so good at this. This is next level clickbait. This is next level persuasion. It's next level manipulation. And then they go even. Okay, now we got Donald Trump, right? It goes darker. It gets even worse, right? If you've read Win Bigly, and now in its second edition, by the way, with new content that Joshua Lisec has helped Scott Adams with for the second edition, for the 2024 election edition, available on Amazon now in hardcover, softcover, and ebook, and soon to be the audiobook associated with it. You remember how the word dark was associated with the Hillary Clinton campaign, and Scott believes that the Godzilla of Persuasion, aka Robert Cialdini, author of Influence, Psychology of Persuasion, and his sequel/prequel, Persuasion, was associated with. It is believed that, according to the hypothesis from Scott Adams, as presented in Win Bigly, first and second edition, the dark word that was used to describe Trump was an invention and recommendation of Robert Cialdini to help Clinton. This is the hypothesis. And by the way, Cialdini has refused to deny that when given the opportunity. Isn't that interesting? So they've got dark, and then in the parentheses, darker. So they want to make sure they don't say it goes darker, right? They don't say that. They say dark, and then in parentheses er. Again, this is Pavlovian persuasion. This is, oh, remember how evil this guy is, dark, and then in parentheses right? Oh, it's even worse, right? So it's two separate thoughts. If they wanted it to be one thought, they would have just said darker. But they want to use that linguistic anchor of dark and make sure that's how you feel about this. Remember that old PGA Tour headline from the early 2000s? These guys are good. That's this right there. The majority of the electorate does not have free will. I hope you understand that, right? When you're engaging in triggering habit formation, that's what this is, right? Creating a habit. That I see this, I feel a certain way. It's not engaging the neocortex. I don't even know about the limbic brain. This is like, yeah, that might be. That might be. It's certainly it's at least a lizard brain, or perhaps Pavlovian dog brain. And then darker with pre-election rhetoric. So rhetoric is a word that they use a lot, like dark rhetoric, violent rhetoric, right? That of course is what we know to be responsible for likely escalating. First, Ryan Wesley Routh, the would-be West Palm Beach Trump International Golf Club assassin. Because something that he had said was that Trump was a threat to democracy. That exact line is a Biden-Harris line that they've used continuously in all the affiliates of the Democratic Party. And he also had a Biden-Harris bumper sticker on his truck. Following the FBI briefing of Trump following the assassination attempt at Butler, he said that he understood Thomas Matthew Crooks to be, quote unquote, very liberal. From our perspective, Jack Posobiec in mind, this is a crazed leftist we're dealing with here. And we want to know about all those encrypted chats he was a part of, the foreign ones, and all those cell phones that he had. Mighty suspicious. Mega sus, as the kids these days like to say. Now, coming back to this pre-election rhetoric. So this idea is like, oh, it's rhetoric. Oh, rhetoric is bad, right? Pre-election. It's escalating. Making sure you're thinking about the election. Oh, it's coming up. It's coming up. It's coming up. Not good. Not good. Not good. See, the word election is in there to provide coherence for all the other linguistic anchors that are present. They kind of like tie them together. Imagine a bunch of anchors. This is to make sure that they're all wrapped around one another when you drop them, right? We like to use linguistic anchor as a metaphor because it's wording, it's a keyword, it's a phrase that has so much density of meaning already existing in people's minds that when you use that word, it sinks the conversation. It sinks it, and rising up to critical thought becomes not possible. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Not necessarily a bad thing. If, and only if, what it is that you want people to be thinking about is what you're using the linguistic anchors for. But this sinks the conversation to make critical thought and analysis not possible. Just not possible. Okay, now that's the headline. Let's get the preview text now. In Donald Trump's campaign message, okay, just they use Donald Trump and then Donald Trump's, this is really for keyword action. His opponents are mentally impaired. That is not false, by the way. That's not false. It is now recognized that Biden was mentally impaired, like universally, following the debate. If you've seen the clips, if you've seen the full interviews even of Kamala Harris, 60 Minutes, Face the Nation, these pre-scripted sort of like town halls where she's actually reading from a teleprompter, the questions are written ahead of time and the answers are written ahead of time and people are planted in the audience, right? And then when the teleprompter doesn't work and she keeps going around the same loop, and then Face the Nation, they felt like they had to change one of her answers in post and editing it because her answer was so bad. It's not particularly possible for a reasonable person. This is my perspective. It's not possible for a reasonable person to view these characters and then read his opponents are mentally impaired and then disagree with that. It is an opinion that seems firmly rooted in observation. Now, is it fact that both of them have a low IQ? Not to my knowledge. But it is an observation, an opinion based on observation. So the idea is like, that's darker rhetoric. Is it though? Or is it observation that tens of millions of Americans agree with, including independents, including Democrats and former Democrats who are, I mean, why did they palace coup Joe Biden? Because he's mentally impaired. Come on. Seriously. And then migrants are killers. Not exactly. Trump did not specifically say that migrants are killers, but we do know that there were roughly 13,000 convicted murderers who were released in the United States after committing the federal crime of illegal immigration. And that's just since, I believe, May 2023. 13,000 plus 15,000 convicted rapists. Now, these are not accused. This is convicted. And they're from all over the place. So what they do is they take keywords like migrants and killers, and then they alter what it was that he said, and then they're saying, in his message, this is what he said when it's not. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? And World War III is right around the corner. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Because United States weaponry is now being used on Russians in Russia and in Ukraine. That's an extreme escalation. Extreme escalation. We know that Boris Johnson and then the Biden administration together teamed up to block a peace deal that both Ukraine and Russia had agreed upon prior to the war beginning in February 2022. So we know that this is the mean tweets world peace guy, right? You might have seen the video in Butler. Trump ducked down after being shot in the head. There was someone in the crowd behind him with, I believe it was a t-shirt that said mean tweets world peace, right? And that's part of the joke now, that he does say that he has had mean tweets in the past, right? World War III is right around the corner. Actually, yeah, that's not an unreasonable speculation. What's the risk of World War III with the status quo? 20%? 30%? We already are seeing Iranian proxies lighting up the US military. And the United States military is not being permitted to, they're not able to respond in kind. Right? We're seeing a drastic situation, escalation in violence in the world under Biden Harris. And we understand that there's going to be more of that because Harris continually says, and Walz continually says in interviews, that they don't disagree with anything that Biden has done, and they would do the same. And then, of course, Biden in his interviews and press conferences says that he has placed Harris in charge of so many different things inside of his administration, right? So the escalation, the war, the millions dead. Who's responsible for that? Not Donald J. Trump, but Biden, Harris. If you want peace, if you want freedom, then it's obvious who you're going to be voting for and who you're not going to be voting for. And yet, everything I've just said in the last 12 minutes, the opposite is embedded into this headline with these Pavlovian triggers. You know what I think that is? I think that's dark.